This is Gen Z, a podcast that explores Generation Z, who they are, how they're different from other generations, while also being an incredible blend of those who came before them. We explore what they think is cool, what moves them, and why they do what they do. I'm your host, Meghan Grace. Where you live and having your first big kid living situation is a milestone that many people look forward to while growing up. It feels like a hallmark of young people growing their independence and developing autonomy outside the environment defined by their parents or guardians. Today, we're exploring Gen Z's path into real estate and home ownership. But a quick reality check, housing affordability is still in the headlines. We actually saw this pop up in our 2021 study as one of the more prominent social issues Gen Z is concerned about. And now we're seeing it as this generation ages and home buying is on the mind. According to Redfin, home ownership rates for young adults stalled in 2024 as prices and interest rates stayed elevated, and first-time home buying remains historically tough. Like we heard in the last episode, the rent versus buy debate is something that Gen Z is confronting head-on right now, as the market feels more tense and out of reach. Like most things with Gen Z, there is a flip side though. Younger buyers are getting more creative as they determine their living situation. New data from Zillow shows Gen Z and millennials are most likely to value the option to rent out a part of their home, a key feature of the concept house hacking, both to offset a mortgage now and build flexibility for the future. Beyond just renting out a spare bedroom, accessory dwelling units are gaining momentum as tools to add income and supply. Think backyard units, mother-in-law suites, and small add-ons that can meaningfully change the math for how young homeowners are approaching managing a mortgage. The Next Gen Homebuyer Report by National Mortgage Insurance and First Home IQ shares another defining factor is that all of this is happening as younger buyers are leaning on new research habits and technology from social media search to AI as they navigate a complex housing market. To help us sort this all out, we're joined by Austin Whitaker, a real estate investor, entrepreneur, and founder of Enrich Revenue Management, a boutique team that prices and optimizes short-term rentals. Before launching his company, Austin spent 4 years as a short-term rental-focused agent, helping clients spot high-performing properties and closing over $20 million in sales. He also holds an economics degree from the University of Florida. Go Gators! Austin has a passion for real estate and taking creative routes towards pursuing a living situation that makes the most sense for you. So let's dive in.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever-evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C-Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high-performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C-Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C-Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
As usual, I am so excited to welcome a new friend because really I walk away from every episode with a new friend, and that's one of the best parts of doing this. But this friend actually comes to us from a recommendation from someone we all know and love, which is our friend Callie, who helps produce this. But I'm joined by Austin today. Austin, welcome to the conversation.
Appreciate you having me. It's truly a pleasure.
We're talking about home buying and real estate, and something that as a homeowner in the last few years, I care about now because I feel like I think about it all the time. But you're really going to give us some insights on what we're seeing in like the home buying, home ownership, real estate industry when it comes to Gen Z. But before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit about you, Austin. Who are you and what do you do in your work? But really, I'm always interested in the journey that people have taken to getting to where they are today. So give us a little background about you.
I appreciate it. I'd say I'm remarkably unremarkable, but I seriously appreciate being here. It's an honor. So I spent the last 4 years as a real estate agent, and with a focus on two different aspects. One was short-term rental and vacation rentals, but also the other half, which is partly how I got into real estate, is a little term called house hacking. And it's something I'm very passionate about, and it helps. It's honestly a really, really powerful way to get into real estate at a young age. But yeah, so I helped a lot of young people do that. And since then, I've made a transition to something a little different, not too different. But yeah.
So what drew you, and we're going to get into house hacking, but I want to go let's rewind when you were like, I'm going to have a big kid job one day. As I call it, the big kid job is one where you're like, I'm getting a full-time paycheck and this is nice. But what drew you to real estate and investing in the first place as a member of Gen Z, right? Because I think some people think of real estate investing as this ambiguous person in their 50s that just has a mysterious amount of money. That's the best way that I put it. Mysterious amounts of money. But what drew you as, let's just say, a younger man in your 20s to real estate and kind of getting into the space of investment?
Yeah, well, I think it's all of our faults for not being old enough to buy in 2008, right? Full joke.
How dare us? I was
seriously
barely out of high school. How dare us not having, more than 3 dimes to put together?
Right, exactly. I went through life and entered college very unserious, I will say. I did not think about my big world real person job and did not particularly care about it, actually. So I was very much a coaster. I did what I was supposed to, but very much a coaster. I cared about where I was at that moment. So very present-minded thinking. So I went to University of Florida. I'm from Florida. And while at University of Florida, I met my wife, then girlfriend, and I wanted to impress her dad. I met him, introduced myself, and he recommended a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I have some issues with the book, but overall it's got a great message about real estate investing. It's a little dated, but it gets that idea across and kind of opens your mind to future thinking and all that. All to say is that paired with my wife being incredibly driven, incredibly forward thinking, led me to really start caring my senior year of college. My degree is in food and resource economics, kind of a funny little one. But long story short, it's a degree for supply chain and about food and agriculture, all that stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I was on a path for more of a PhD program, a master's PhD. But after reading that book and originally just reading it to impress my father-in-law, that led me down a path of being really passionate about real estate. And so out of college, actually still in college, I drove and I started my real estate career in Atlanta. Why Atlanta? My wife, then girlfriend, got a job there. And so I wanted to move where she was moving. And so I would drive on weekends to Atlanta on my last semester, and I would work on real estate and then drive back and take my classes during the week in Gainesville. It was about a 5-hour drive. So I'd live in my car. It was an interesting time, but I finished my degree while learning real estate. It's certainly as a real estate agent, it's a startup, a ramp up period. It takes you some time to get started. You can't expect to make any money at first. And so that I found that last semester was a time for me to really get going. And yeah, so that's how I got started. I became very passionate about real estate. And then soon after, I was actually able to purchase my first home. We can talk a lot more about it as well. And I house hacked that house.
I appreciate that your wife's dad, well now father-in-law, was like, "You gonna read this book? And you're gonna be the first one, dude. no poor dad stuff around here. But we always appreciate a critical, we love a critique on a book, right? Like to say like, there's some good stuff there, but it's a little dated. Like, let's give this an update. But I'm glad that, you got, not to say the kick in the butt, right? Like, you don't strike me as someone that was like a bad kid, right? But it is true. Sometimes we need that wake up moment. And I'm glad that you were able to have it as a type A driven, ambitious young woman. It's a dream to hear that there are some young men that don't, look at someone like your wife and say, ugh, that's a lot. But instead said, let me rise to the occasion and let some of that ambition rub off on me. So it's clear that you are passionate about real estate and getting into that. And I know that we're going to have so much to talk about. But first, let's get into this fun little term you've talked about, house hacking. Can you tell me more about it? First of all, what is it? And why are we hearing more and more about it, especially with younger home buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll say just right off the bat, buying a home is exciting and it's also terrifying. And it's generally, for most people in their lives, it is the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. And so it should not be taken lightly. I know a lot of people my age and in my generation might be terrified of the thought or think it's impossible. It's not. And that's what house hacking can do. But at the same time, you should also not think of it as something that's easy to do, because it's not. You have to be careful about how you do things. It's almost like a relationship when you buy a house. You're committing to a long-term relationship. Anyway, house hacking. The general basic idea is you buy a home as an owner-occupant. And a lot of things people might not know about home buying is if you are to buy as an owner occupying the home, it is a lower down payment commitment. So it's a little more accessible. Additionally, it's also a lower interest rate than other loans. And so it's got one of the lowest interest rates paired with one of the lowest down payments. And those are all incentives to help people buy homes and be able to afford a home to live in. The added little cherry on top is if you are to buy a home and live in it yourself, if you can target that home and either make a little and maybe has a secondary unit, or you even just rent out the spare bedrooms, if you have that home make you a little bit of income while you live in it, all of a sudden it can turn into something that's giving back to you rather than paying a rent payment that goes just to that landlord or that company that owns that real estate.
So really, it's the idea of like getting a house, but not. I think a lot of people where we're seeing this might think of like home buying as like, I've gotten married or I have the capital. I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to live in it by myself. I'm going to be a homeowner. And that feels like something that a lot of people can achieve maybe later in their, late 20s, early 30s, whatever that looks like. But I think the big piece of it is this, the partnership element of it, right? So like, having two incomes is going to make paying that mortgage a lot easier. But we never said it had to be the person you're married to or dating or anything like that. And so I think if I'm hearing this correctly, home hacking is the idea of like, well, you might rent out a room, or like in our case, like we have a really nice basement. Like you could rent out the basement, turn it into an apartment. It's covering that. And I think that in a former, maybe this was happening, we just didn't see it as often, as like the people that buy a duplex and they live in one side, rent out the other. Am I getting this correctly?
100%. Yep. So there's like multiple different levels of house hacking. The basic of basic is rent out spare bedrooms, right? And then you got like the duplex, and then there's some other more creative ways we can talk about. One way totally is that basement, making that into its own apartment. But yes, you're absolutely correct. Some people, I think it was a little more on the DL. In general, as far as, people, there was no term for buying a duplex, living in one half, renting out, and then renting out the other for a long time. Now there is. So it's easier to talk about. So
I appreciate that. I didn't realize it was house hacking. We've thought about potentially doing our basement and turning it into an apartment, but we are selfish beings. and we are turning it into a bar and a wet bar and a movie theater. So no, we can rent it out if you want to come have your Super Bowl party at our house, but that's about it. But we do have someone that's renting out one of our rooms because like it's empty and it's furnished. And he's delightful. Our cat's obsessed with him. And we were just like, it's sitting empty. That feels silly. So thank you for explaining that to me to know that that's a real thing. Let's talk about the relationship though that Gen Z, we're already getting into that mindset, right? Like Gen Z is doing things differently. That's what this whole podcast is about. How is Gen Z's relationship to home buying and real estate different than millennials, Gen X, or even boomers? And what are we seeing kind of being prioritized differently with this generation?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tricky. Boomers, we like to think boomers will stand on or die on that hill that they had it tough and they earned it, yada, yada, yada. And I'm not saying boomers didn't. And I have a vast amount of respect for people in all different generations. But it's certainly a more scary, difficult time now than ever has been, in my opinion, for young people to purchase a home. And really the stats also show it. I didn't come prepared with stats, but I do know that home ownership in young people is the lowest it's ever been historically. Since we've been tracking those statistics. So
I'll look up the stats, but I think there's probably something there too. If we're just going to make like an educated guess between my background and your background, is people are more transient. So like not in a bad way, but they might go live in Atlanta for 2 years after graduating. And then maybe they want to move back to their hometown. Like, why would you buy a house in Atlanta if you're just gonna move back to your hometown? Right. Or people are relocating for their jobs, or we have more remote options for work. And I think that work and the home buying is really a big piece of it. And people are buying homes, but they might not stay in their jobs for as long as they're going to stay in their homes. And I think that kind of shakes some stuff up when we think about real estate. And nobody really wants to be like buying and reselling homes all the time.
Yep. I will say also, buying a home takes a lot of conscientiousness. It requires you to set money aside for that intention. And that's something that is hard to do and think about when you're in your early 20s. Most people are not thinking about purchasing a home as something that's even possible. And also, it's kind of the chicken or the egg. There's so many different reasons why the statistics are down. I know it's down for millennials as well, and it's even lower for Gen Z. Also, another one is just affordability in general. My first home I purchased, I went much further away than I ever expected I would when I first started, location wise. So I made a lot of amendments to lower the quality of the location just to get in and get on that train.
And that makes complete sense. Like I think back to when I was moving, I live in Nashville, and as a millennial, like my parents they're like, we're going to be baby boomers and we're going to invest in a townhome that you can live in. Right. So like they were kind of doing a weird house hacking situation. I didn't live with them, but they're like, because the market in Nashville is really good, even in a townhome. And it was really smart of them to do. Like they just sold that townhome. We all kind of mourned it. Like it was my first big kid house. And, it was wise of them to do that, but they were exactly the same way. They're, sweet girl, you're not living in Germantown. You're not living downtown because like we don't have $750,000 for a townhouse. Sorry. But I actually really enjoyed living a little further out because I lived in more of a planned community where there was an HOA that took care of the yards and like things that in my 20s, I did not really want to be taking care of. Like I wasn't going to be out there pushing a lawnmower. People that know me are like, you still don't push a lawnmower. I'm like, I had no business doing that. But I do think that that experience gave me so much insight as a millennial because again, you like live in your parents' house and then you go to college and you're like, I think I want one of those. And then you look at the price tag, you're like, Mom and Dad, you had that much money? And they're like, no, we didn't. The economy has changed. Sweet child, the economy has changed. And I think that we've been talking a lot about how Gen Z, previously we were talking about retirement and how the economy has changed, how work has changed, how our relationship with money has changed. And I think that's providing a different narrative for young people today. And I want to talk a little bit about that because the narrative right now is like the market's tough, interest rates are high, Gen Z is doing their best with their first big kid jobs, but like we all know that those first big kid jobs don't always pay, a ton of money. So how are you seeing Gen Z navigate this narrative and engaging with real estate and engaging in this home buying or even renting mindset? So how are we also seeing Gen Z navigate the home buying market and this narrative that feels like it's riddled with barriers?
Yeah. I will say there is a ton of barriers. The biggest barrier in my opinion isn't the economy. It isn't the job market. It is the mindset and the forethought before. If you are conscious with your decisions now, you can set a plan and make that come to fruition slowly but over time. For me personally, I lived out of my car. I saved as much money as I possibly could, so for the intent to get my first home as quickly as possible. But I think a lot of people my age and my generation and even younger just see that as an impossibility to buy a home. It's just it's so unattainable. They need so much money. The reality, it's actually way more accessible than you might think. The price points that you might see when you're looking for renting versus owning, you look at the home you're renting in like a great location and you look at the price point, it's crazy. Well, if you're willing to make amends and go a little further out, you can really find a quality home that can probably generate you some money while you live in it, just further away. And you have to kind of sacrifice that standard of living with that location to be able to plant a seed that will afford you a better standard of living down the line.
And I think that mindset is something that Gen Z is potentially a little bit different than previous generations. Like millennials are kind of known for like the living for the moment mindset, which is, yes, it experientially, it is a little bit of that of like, I'm only gonna be in my 20s once. So like, I want to live in the cool area that's walkable to every coffee shop known to man. And so I can get my avocado toast, but then I will never be able to survive and buy a home because I ate all the avocado toast and had the lattes, right? So like, there is that mindset of, we want to in our 20s be in that place that is cool and hip and like near all the stuff. But in reality, like we are probably working 9 to 5-ish, let's just say, Monday through Friday. And most people are not like, unless you live in New York, right? Like, let me go see my friends every other day. A lot of times, like, I want to go home and eat and maybe go to the gym and go to sleep, right? And so I think there is this maybe misconception, and maybe we should blame shows like Sex and the City or New Girl, where like we're like every single day you will be socializing, so you need to be where all your friends are downtown. And I don't think that's necessarily 100% the case. And I think Gen Z is willing to kind of like grapple with that of, hey, like I'm going to go live in the suburbs or a little bit further out than like the downtown cool area and spend less, save up, and drive in when I need to see my friends. And I think that we're also going to see, because of that mindset, Gen Z, and we've seen this, is taking jobs in markets that are high paying, but might be living in smaller to medium-sized towns because they're able to access homes and affordable living. So I think we're gonna get away from the every young person is moving to a coast after college and living in New York and LA to live in the cool part of the country or cool part of the city to be. Let's talk a bit about we've talked a bit about house hacking, this idea of like investing, but then also coming with a plan. And I actually know some young people who've done that, where they've purchased a house in their early 20s. And someone I used to work with bought a house in their 20s and then continued to just rent it out to coworkers that we were like, and they would like live together, and they're all a bunch of young guys. And it was great because then he, like, I think owns like 2 or 3 more houses now. He's just very smart from a real estate perspective. But what are some other ways that you're seeing Gen Z engage with real estate in potentially non-traditional ways, or things that are kind of like bucking trends that we've known in the past?
Yeah, it's that's a hard question, honestly. I don't really know how to answer it. It's very, I think the being able to make amends and like weigh the opportunity cost of the higher expense area versus lower. That's generally what I've seen as a big value. And a lot of the people I worked with in the past, like my age, to help buy a home, they were really bumming it to get to get to buy their first home quickly. But I'll be honest, there's not, I don't know much of a better path or a different way other than the house hacking and really, bumming it just a little bit. So
bumming it just a little bit in your 20s is totally fine in my mind. Like, I think there is some shit, like some of my best friends to this day, and I live cross country, are people I've lived with in our 20s, because remember that time, like when we lived together and like we got the HOA called on us and our friends were like, yeah, because we didn't pull our weeds. Who knew that we did pull our weeds, right? Like dumb things that we as 20-year-olds were not knowing. So I think that there's a little bit of kinship in that. And like, I think there's some shared bond. Maybe it's trauma bonding is what they call it, of being in your 20s and having to live together. But it really pulls people together. I think it's good for the community.
Yeah, I mean, you remember those moments sometimes the most, when you're a little bit in trouble. But yeah, absolutely.
We learn in dissonance. Like one of my best friends who used to be a roommate, like our house got broken into, and like I don't know why they didn't steal any of my stuff. Maybe they didn't think it was cool enough. But that was the moment that we all learned about home security, right? Like we all should have set the alarm, or we all like things that we should have been doing. And we realized it wasn't our fault. Like it was like a series of break-ins in our neighborhood. But like we still, like almost 15 years later, talk about that home break-in, and we're like, thank God no one was home. And like I will never forget the day I was like driving home from campus. I was in grad school, and like my roommates were just sitting on the curb crying, and I was like, what happened here? And they were like, we got broken into. And I was like, oh my God, okay, did you call the police, you clowns? Like,
yeah,
it was just, and we laugh about it to this day. We shouldn't. Everyone was safe and fine. The dogs were safe and fine. I think we lost a few laptops, as one does in like a college area, but thank goodness for insurance, right? Get your renter's insurance, people. This is why it exists.
absolutely.
It's why it exists. So let's talk about Gen Z. We've talked about the barriers. We talked about some of the ways they're approaching it in non-traditional fashions, as they tend to do. We've just learned that Gen Z is they love to hack something. But there's as you've identified, a knowledge piece that comes into this, that getting into real estate as a homeowner, a renter, making that financial choice is a big one, no matter which way you take. So what role are you seeing community and technology and kind of democratized shared knowledge help Gen Z navigate living environments and real estate today?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a time where we have access to everything all at once, and both correct and incorrect information, which is a scary part. That's why my big disclosure with home buying, before I even get to talking about it, is it's a big thing. It is a big thing. It should be treaded lightly, even if it's something that can be amazing. It should be treaded a little lightly and have some level of caution when you approach it. I think for me personally, it was a book that got me started, but I learned so much more from other people who on YouTube or and from people in my life who've already gone through something similar. And the idea of house hacking was something that was still a little novel going in like around COVID time. And I think it's becoming even more known as like the term house hacking. I think it's always been around. It's just, but even now it's getting more and more creative how we make that work. One thing that we've done a lot recently is tiny homes. They are an easy way to add a secondary unit to a home and also add a great amount of value to the home. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense. And it kind of attacks that problem from two ways. I didn't get that idea for myself. I saw other people doing that. And I was like, that could be very interesting. So
absolutely. Cause I even think about like, if it's not forever that someone's like a tenant in that tiny home, Airbnb it, right? Like there's someone that wants to be in your area and they want a place to rest their head and a place to make their coffee, right? Like there's so many ways that we deal with all the licensing stuff in Nashville. It's like a possibility short-term rental license in this place.
I know
Damn
very
near
well.
impossible. You're like, I know it. But I do think that there's like this creativity that Gen Z is bringing into this. And I think that I want to get into Gen Z's values really in a minute, but like the fact that they're like, let's pop a tiny home down in the backyard. Someone can live in, like, that can be our you, me, and Dupree situation where like we're a couple and our best friend lives out in the tiny home, but like comes in for dinner sometimes. That's kind of fun. That it's almost like the approach to the mother-in-law suite or like the back pool house where you've got the person that's renting it out. Like I think of like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, if you ever watch it, where like Will lives in the back pool house for a while because he wants his own space, wants his own little apartment. And I think there is that mindset of wanting independence, but also wanting flexibility. And Gen Z is a bunch of hustlers. Like I will be the first to say that young people today are hustling more than I think any other generation has been. And there's this element, I think, of not just side hustling, right? We hear that a lot, of just like preparation for the future. Like they're kind of like weirdly idealistic, opportunistic doomsday preppers. They're like, we got to stack up that cash because we don't know what's going to happen. So when we think about real estate, how do you see some of that coming to light, some of Gen Z's values and how they're shaking some stuff up? If we get down to like really the nitty gritty of who this generation is, and it's your peers and the people that you've worked with as clients, I'm sure, but how are we seeing some of their values come out in their home buying, renting, real estate decisions in general?
I mean, yeah, I think to me, a lot of it's the grit, honestly. And I think I came up with, there was like I remember there was some high school speaker that came to my high school and talked a lot about grit, and I think it's a little corny to say, but honestly, the perseverance to make something work and is a value I've seen on top of the creativity. Like the amount of, I'm not a huge social media person, but the amount of different ideas and things I see online is from people in my generation. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I think also Gen Z came up in a weird time where technology was becoming like the internet was becoming everything, but we had a little bit of childhood before it was everything. And so maybe that quote unquote brain rot isn't fully set in like other maybe generation. Was it Gen Alpha right after us?
Just those rotten brains with Gen Alpha. No, the Gen Alpha is they're a whole other beast. We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, people like, you gonna study Gen Alpha? I was like, I'm a little scared. It's in their name. They're gonna like dominate me with technology or something. They terrify me in a good way. They terrify me in a good way. As every new generation does. Like I'm like, you're scary, but I love you. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. This idea of a little bit of the analog. I think Gen Z is also like kind of attracted to like, let's do it offline for a second. Like, let's do it by hand for fun. And I'm like, we didn't create all this technology to do everything by hand, friends. We went through it to get you here. But with that, there's so much, and you identified like purchasing real estate, getting involved in that can be one of the biggest purchases or investments someone makes. The people that do it so calmly and coolly, I'm like, how? But there's probably a lot of people that are like, real estate sounds interesting, but I'm very overwhelmed. What is your first piece of advice you'd give those people who even just want to start exploring this concept without being like, let me dive in head first and get in over my head?
Yep. The first thing I would say is stay calm. Stay calm. Because there is no one, and this is something when I was a real estate agent, I reminded every client, you don't have to buy the house. You don't have to buy a house. You can go on with your life without doing it. Some people are not, they're not emotionally prepared to buy a house. And the reality is it is an emotional overhead in your life. It's something that you have to worry about just a little bit. Even if you're not thinking about it, it's in the back of your head. And so my first piece of advice always is to stay calm. From there, I would look at it as trying to build out a foundation of your knowledge. So start with, before you even look at houses, understand the lending process. And then I would also, and so that's Googling, hey, how does the actual, like what type of loans are there? I could talk a lot about that, but I know it's a pretty big topic on its own. But understand, hey, how much money am I going to have to put into the house to even just buy the home? And then how much am I going to pay monthly? Like, is that something that I'm willing to take on? From there, then you can research areas. You can research also conditions of home, how to take care of a home. It's very different taking care of a home as an owner versus a renter, right? Here, the classic example I give is changing your HVAC filter. A lot of renters don't do that. They don't have to think about it. But when you own the HVAC in the house, you got to change the filter occasionally, or else your system is going to die early. So
I swear to you, owning a home, Austin, sometimes just feels like all I do is change filters. Like if it's not the HVAC filter, it's somebody else. It's the air purifier filter. It's the water filter. I'm like, I understand this is a very filtered environment, but damn, like, can you all get on the same cycle? Because like, I swear, I'll be like, I just got back from Lowe's and now I got to go back to Lowe's. And part of it is I have pets that can't keep their fur on their bodies. And so that's like, I recognize that. But like, yes, word of the wise, look up your loans and then also like get your filters sorted on the same time frame. So I need to get like filter day on the calendar is what it is. Like everybody's getting a new filter today.
Yep.
Well, Austin, this has been so fantastic. I love talking about real estate. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's such a cool industry. Again, after I've bought a home, I'm like, but I want another one. And so like, even though I have no business buying another home, I'm always on Zillow. Like, that's a cool one. And my husband's like, you're not buying that. We don't even live there. Why are you trying to buy that house? Cause I'll be like looking at real estate abroad. He's like, we need to pay off the mortgage here before we think about a house abroad. I was like, are you sure? They're giving away villas in Italy for like 150,000. He's like, decrepit villas. So I have to be talking off the ledge because I'm a dreamer. Austin, before we wrap up, I think it's really cool that what you've done to be able to help people your age and get really involved in that and help people understand real estate and how they can get engaged in that as an investment opportunity and kind of preparing for the future. So first of all, thank you for that. But before we let you go, I ask every guest, but what's your favorite thing about working with your Gen Z peers?
Great question. I think, although I think the ability not to take things too seriously. I think we have a much more joyful and happy life if we're laughing, and I think the humor that Gen Z has is amazing, and maybe it's come out of a necessary area of how we've come up, but I think the ability to just have a laugh even in serious moments is pretty cool. And I think that's a value that I see a lot in my peers. So
I did too. Like, I don't always understand Gen Z's humor, but there's some things that they do. I'm like, that was funny. And I think we're even seeing it if we're going to talk about like humor and the collision of real estate. Like, I think that we're finding there's more Gen Z real estate agents popping up now because they're of that age. And there's some that are really funny out there. Like, I'm just kind of like, that's true. I do appreciate that take on it. And I can't wait for HGTV to start capitalizing on like some of these Gen Z real estate people, because that's where I thrive. I've always been an HGTV girl. Like, even as a kid, like, I loved it. I was like, they're gonna love it or list it. I think they're gonna list this one. And I can't wait for Gen Z to start like making their mark in that space. But
what gets me is when I see the older real estate agents adopt that type of humor in like their promotional stuff just to like be with the times, and it's hysterical.
Yeah, be with the times. Let the Gen Z write the script. It's really funny. And I got to shout out my own real estate agent. She has helped Gretchen Fitzsimmons. She's the best. She's with the Ashton Real Estate Group. Got to give her a shout out. But she's helped me buy a home. She's helped my parents buy 2 homes. She's helped one of my good friends in town buy a home, my other good friend buy a home. But we're, besides my parents, all like younger home buyers. And she's like our cool aunt, and she like makes sure that we're taken care of. And so like it is possible to have intergenerational connection in the home buying space. Well, Austin, it has been wonderful to spend time with you today, and a big shout out to our friend Callie for getting us all connected. But I'm sure there's a lot of people, young listeners, that are feeling a little bit better about what their options might look like, and not overwhelmed, because that will come when you sign all of your documents at the loan place when you buy your house. Be overwhelmed then.
Yeah.
Well, Austin, where can people stay up to date with your work? How can people connect with you if they want to follow along and continue to learn with you?
Yeah, I mean, easiest way is again, I'm not a huge social media guy, so LinkedIn really, which I don't. I'm a very much behind the scenes type of person. So, for honestly, LinkedIn. I have an Instagram. It's Austin K Whitaker. But again, I hardly use it. I'm just one of the. I'm different. I'm in the back end working on different stuff. So we didn't really talk about it, but I have a company now that prices short-term rentals like Airbnbs.
Awesome.
And so it's sort of like how you price hotel rooms. I do that for companies. So
that's awesome. Well, we will make sure to get your LinkedIn added to the show notes so people can connect with you. But Austin, thank you again for being here, sharing your story, and sharing some insights.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's Libby DeLucian. If you're sick of business advice that sounds cute, but doesn't actually move the needle forward, this one's for you. The Libby DeLucian podcast is where we go one layer deep. No gurus, no glitter, just straight up unfiltered talk about scaling a business, running a household, and holding on to your sanity in the middle of the chaos. If you're the bottleneck in your business or in your own life, I'll show you how to fix it. Simple, tactical, and one layer deep every time. Let's go. Visit libbyd.com and check out our podcast today.
All right, y'all, let's recap what the seriously useful gems Austin shared about how Gen Z is thinking differently about real estate and their approach to homeownership. So here are a few of my favorite key takeaways. First, house hacking is a growing entry point for young home buyers. Austin reminded us that buying a home doesn't necessarily require a solo mortgage or making a purchase within a romantic partnership. Renting out a spare room, turning a basement into an apartment, or even a tiny home out back can offset costs and make home ownership more accessible. 2, mindset matters as much as money. Yes, affordability is a huge barrier. Austin stressed that the biggest hurdle is often the belief that buying is possible. With planning and making small adjustments over time and patience, like living with roommates or choosing a location a little further out, you can plant seeds that can grow into long-term stability down the road. 3, flexibility beats perfection. Gen Z is proving that you don't have to buy your forever home first. Being open to starter homes, different markets, or creative living arrangements can open up doors, literally and figuratively. 4, learn before you leap. From understanding loan options to budgeting for hidden costs like maintenance, Austin emphasized that education is power. Even if you're not ready to buy tomorrow, building financial literacy around real estate today will make that process less overwhelming later. 5, community and creativity are key. Whether it's leaning on online resources, learning from peers, or experimenting with new ideas like ADUs or short-term rentals, Gen Z's resourcefulness is reshaping what ownership looks like, and we're likely just seeing the start of this resourcefulness shaping the real estate market. If you're feeling like home ownership is out of reach, Austin's story is proof that there are multiple pathways forward, and maybe not traditional ones, but ones that can fit your life, your values, and your timeline. A big thank you to Austin for joining the conversation and sharing such insightful things that we can all learn more about the real estate world. If you want to follow along with Austin's work, be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn, and we'll have his profile in the show notes. And of course, thank you for tuning in. We always hope that you walk away from each episode with more information and feeling more empowered. But we also love to hear about it. So what stuck with you, and what will you keep thinking about after this episode ends? You can share it on Spotify in the listener comment section, or you can follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help more people find these conversations and learn along with us. We've had a blast this season, and we still have a few more months of new episodes to go. However, we're also always looking for new topics and insightful guests to feature. If you have a suggestion, share your thoughts in the form on my website, meghanmgrace.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Meghan M. Grace so we can keep the conversation going there. I couldn't do this episode without the Gen Z team behind the scenes. This episode was produced by Kelly Waters and edited by Leah Kramer. Thank you again for stopping by. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll chat soon.